They called her a good girl. Not as praise. Not as kindness. It was the kind of phrase used like a thumb pressed into a bruise, casual, mocking, meant to remind someone of their place. She was 18. Young enough that her age followed her like a shadow. Pretty enough that it irritated the wrong people. Slim-waisted, composed, almost too carefully built for a world that measured worth in scars, broken knuckles, and blood-soaked mats. And the moment she stepped into the concrete bay annex, she became a target. It wasn't written anywhere. There were no rules posted, no official hazing rituals. But everyone in that building understood the code. Newcomers were tested. Weakness was hunted. And young women, especially those who didn't arrive loud or apologetic, were examined with a cruelty that hid behind laughter. Eden Cross didn't walk in trying to prove anything. She didn't wear defiance like armor, didn't smile to soften the room, didn't announce herself with bravado. She entered the annex the way she'd entered everything else in her life. Quietly, deliberately, shoulders squared, boots tight, uniform sharp enough to cut. She looked like she'd done it 1,000 times before. And that unsettled them. 18 years old. Too calm. Too controlled. Too composed. Her face was soft, almost misleading, but her posture told another story. Her steps landed with precision. Her hands rested still at her utility belt, not fidgeting, not searching for permission. She wasn't nervous, and that made people more uncomfortable than fear ever could. The women noticed first. They glanced at her once, then looked away, not with jealousy, but with something closer to recognition. Pity, maybe. Understanding. They'd been there before. They'd survived the brushes that lingered too long, the jokes dressed up as instruction, the smirks disguised as mentorship. They had earned their place by enduring. And Eden was new enough not to know the rules. At least, that's what the room assumed. The men stared openly. Not subtle. Not shy. Their eyes tracked her movement, the line of her waist beneath a compression shirt, the stillness of her jaw, even when her body looked wired and ready to strike. Some watched as if waiting for her to drop something, just so they could bend down slowly and remind her who controlled the space. Others looked at her like a mascot, a poster girl someone had accidentally dropped into a war they didn't think she belonged in. Eden passed them without flinching. No fake smiles. No polite nods. Just forward. She carried a silence with her, not the kind that begged for attention, but the kind that warned against it. Still, it didn't take long. From somewhere behind her, a voice slid low and deliberate. Good girl. It landed exactly where it was meant to. A laugh followed. Short. Smug. Shared between two men near the kettlebells. Eden didn't turn. Didn't react. But her gloves tightened, leather creaking once as she adjusted them. One pull. One twist. Controlled. Across the annex, a middle-aged man with thick arms and sun-baked tan lines looked up from a schedule board. Clipboard in hand. Smirk ready. Gunnery Sergeant Hal Mercer. He tapped the clipboard against his thigh, once, like punctuation. They are sending us prom queens now, he said. The room laughed. Not kindly. Not evenly. It was predatory, practiced, the kind of laughter that carried across wrestling mats and sand pits. The kind that didn't ask permission, because it had already decided who belonged and who didn't. Eden didn't slow. She kept walking as if the comment were meant for someone else. But Mercer wasn't finished. He turned toward the pull-up rig, where a line of men were waiting, and raised his voice just enough to slice through the room. Careful, boys. Looks like she brought a magazine body to a gunfight. Louder laughter this time. Eden paused at the edge of the mat bay, turning just enough to offer a side profile. Not confrontation, assessment. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she scanned the rotation board, checked her initials, clocked her assignment. No response to the noise. No acknowledgement. But when she moved again, the silence that followed her was heavier than the laughter that came before. A woman in an instructor shirt passed behind her and murmured, barely audible, "Keep your head down." Eden didn't nod. Didn't answer. Didn't blink. Because Eden Cross hadn't come here to blend in. Everything about her already contradicted the room's assumptions. 18 years old, yes, but Trident qualified through a provisional path. Prior youth auxiliary. Top percentile in reflex speed. Highest control scores in aquatic environment drills. A 2-minute rope climb time that outpaced most of the older men on base. On her rest days, she looked like someone who belonged on a billboard. But she didn't move like one. Her eyes tracked like a tactician's. Her steps landed like controlled strikes. She didn't lean, didn't fidget, didn't waste motion. She held herself like someone trained to take a hit and respond without delay. That was what made her dangerous. Men like Mercer didn't fear loud women. They feared the quiet ones, the ones who didn't play the room, didn't ask for protection, didn't shrink or perform. Eden wasn't invisible. She was a challenge. And challenges, in places like this, became rituals. The first official test came during orientation. A standard lineup. Names, ranks, assignments. Except Eden wasn't treated like anyone else. Mercer subtly repositioned the line, tightening spacing, shifting bodies until she stood dead center. Every man within 3 paces could see her clearly. Her profile, her posture, the stillness of her hands. When her turn came, her voice was crisp and even. Petty Officer Eden Cross. Direct transfer. Atlantic Path. 3rd cohort. Mercer blinked, then tilted his head, smile lazy and dismissive. Say that again. Eden didn't flinch. Petty Officer Eden Cross. No. The rest. Sounded like something I ordered at a diner. A few men chuckled. Eden repeated it. Same tone. Same precision. No emotion. Just data. Good girl, someone muttered. Another voice snorted. Gotta train 'em young. The laughter was thinner now, uneven. Mercer scratched something onto his clipboard and muttered, loud enough to carry. Cross. That her name or a warning? Eden said nothing. She folded her hands behind her back, posture perfect, eyes forward. She had passed the first test without the room realizing it. She refused to entertain them. And that only made things worse. By the end of the first day, Eden Cross was no longer just the new arrival. She was the problem. The annex didn't need formal hazing rituals because power in that room moved through subtler channels, assignments, positioning, attention. Eden learned that quickly. She didn't provoke it. She didn't challenge it. But the moment she refused to perform embarrassment or fear, the room quietly recalibrated around her. The next escalation was disguised as opportunity. Later that afternoon, during a rotation meant for familiarization, Eden's name was singled out. Not because she volunteered. Not because she failed. A sharp voice cut across the floor instead. Cross. Front and center. It came from Brent Lasker, one of the instructors. Middle-aged. Always smiling. The kind of smile that suggested he enjoyed having information others didn't. No explanation followed. No one else was called forward. She stepped onto the mat without hesitation. They asked her to demonstrate a transition hold for a group of visiting instructors. Simple enough. A routine maneuver meant to showcase control, positioning, compliance. Eden executed it cleanly. Reset. Again. Clean. Again. Each time she rose from the mat, her form was exact, her breathing steady, her composure intact. And each time, the smirks around the room widened. Not because of her performance. Because of the way they watched her body move through it. Look at that arch, someone whispered. Bet her back's as bendy as her record. The comments stayed low, but they traveled. Eden didn't react. She reset every time, waiting for instruction, eyes forward. When she was finally dismissed, she turned and walked away without a word. The women noticed. They didn't say anything, but Eden felt it. The way they shifted, the way their shoulders stiffened. They recognized the test. They had all taken it once. They just hadn't been 17 when it started. The first touch didn't come in the dark. It came under fluorescent lights, with half the room watching. Eden had just finished a sled push drill. Sweat barely clung to her skin. Her breathing was controlled. She stripped off her gloves in one smooth motion and moved toward the hydration station. The corridor narrowed there, just enough to funnel bodies past rolled mats and storage bins. That's where a hand wrapped around her waist. Not a bump. Not an accident. A full grip. Palm flat. Fingers spread. Claiming. Eden froze for half a second, not from shock, but calculation. Her head turned slowly over her shoulder. Brent Lasker. Close. Smiling. No apology. No hesitation. Didn't want you walking into traffic, sweetheart. Across the room, Gunnery Sergeant Mercer watched, arms crossed, no clipboard this time. Just observation. Beside him stood Miles Catch, a contractor Eden had noticed before. Quiet, sharp-eyed, always watching without being seen. Eden looked down at the hand on her waist. Then back up at Lasker. Don't touch me. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't tremble. It sounded like policy. It should have ended there. Instead, Mercer spoke, loud enough to echo. Then don't walk around shaped like a distraction. The room went still. Even a few of the men who'd been laughing seconds earlier froze. Mercer hadn't whispered it. He'd broadcast it. Eden took one step forward, just enough that Lasker's hand slipped off. No struggle. No spectacle. She unmade the contact without force. Then she looked directly at Mercer. I'm here for warfighting, Gunny. Mercer raised an eyebrow. Oh, you'll get a fight. All right. Someone laughed. Thin. Uneasy. Eden didn't flinch. She grabbed a hydration bottle and took a drink. Nearby, a female support tech pretended to sort clipboards, eyes low. Eden didn't address her. They both knew something had shifted. This wasn't about respect anymore. It was about survival. The most disturbing part wasn't the grab. It wasn't the comment. It was how normal it felt to them, as if Eden's body were a shared resource, as if waist grabs were part of the curriculum, as if the youngest, fastest, most decorated new operator was still just a girl. Reset the lanes, Mercer called. Looks like someone needs hands-on correction. The laughter returned, but it had changed. Because the room had seen Eden's eyes. And fire was coming. They didn't wait for her to fail. They engineered it. The next morning, Eden's name appeared at the bottom of every board. Last lane. Last rotation. Heaviest ruck. Combatives paired with the least cooperative partner, every time. Fatigue farming. Grind her down. Keep her in the dirt while everyone else rotated fresh. Eden didn't protest. She showed up early. Gear squared. Posture locked. She absorbed the weight, the repetition, the imbalance without comment. By day 3, the pretense of fairness disappeared entirely. During a resistance band sprint, Mercer shouted from the rail. Cross, you look like you're running a catwalk, not combat prep. Back in the chute. She'd already completed 6 rounds. The others had done 4. She went back without a word. Good girl, someone whispered again. They were blending now. Individual voices, dissolving into one machine. Later that day, they forced her into another demonstration. This time for stance correction. Mercer narrated while Lasker stood behind her, adjusting her posture. His hands stayed too long on her hips. Too firm on her lower back. You gotta hold this one steady, boys, Mercer said. Otherwise, she'll dance right out of your grip. Laughter. Eden's face didn't twitch, but her hands clenched just enough that veins rose beneath the skin. Afterward, she stood alone at a sink in the drying bay, rinsing sweat from her collar. The metal reflected her face, calm, focused, unreadable. A voice slid in behind her. Low. Female. They'll push until you cry or swing. Eden didn't turn. She watched her reflection and replied quietly, then they'll be disappointed. No response came. None was needed. Because this wasn't about attitude or ability. It was about hierarchy. About whether a woman like Eden Cross, young, disciplined, lethal-looking, and unwilling to shrink, would play soft or break hard. She wasn't planning on doing either. The message came at the end of the day. Not digital. Not official. Just a sharply scrawled note on the drill sheet, clipped behind the med tent. Corrective session. P.O. Cross. 1800. Mat Room C. No instructor listed. No witnesses. No checklist. Eden stared at it for less than a second. She didn't ask questions. She already knew what they wanted. Silence. And a place with no cameras. Eden Cross walked into Mat Room C at exactly 17:59. Not early. Not late. The door was already unlocked. It always was. This room wasn't meant for safety. It was meant for isolation. No mirrors. No windows. No cameras. Just worn mats, seams darkened by years of repetition, and the faint chemical sting of industrial cleaner barely masking old sweat. A single hallway light flickered outside, the only sign the room was occupied. Eden set her towel bag against the wall and scanned the space once. One door. No exit routes. Nothing that could be used as leverage if it turned violent, except bodies. She wasn't nervous. She was mapping terrain. Footsteps arrived exactly when she expected them to. 3 sets. Measured. Controlled. The door opened, not slammed, and Gunnery Sergeant Hal Mercer walked in first. He looked amused, not angry. Behind him came Brent Lasker, still wearing that familiar grin, and Miles Catch, silent, observant, positioning himself near the door without being told. A triangle. Cross, Mercer said, like he was opening a sparring session. Still here. That's either guts or pride. Eden didn't answer. She adjusted her stance by half a degree. Catch closed the door. Soft click. We've noticed you struggling with cohesion, Lasker said, stepping closer, tone instructional. Thought a more focused session might help. Mercer circled her slowly. One-on-one attention. Consider it a gift. Silence did what Eden wanted it to do. It made them talk. You've got the look, Mercer continued, stopping in front of her. That image gets you places. But here? It buys the wrong kind of attention. Lasker's eyes dropped briefly to her waist. You get that, right? Catch said nothing. He didn't need to. He was already positioned like a latch. This is about helping you, Mercer said. Breaking some of that stiffness. Rounding out the ego before the real war eats you alive. Eden exhaled once. Clean. Controlled. You ever wonder, she said calmly, why your wives stopped asking about your days? Lasker laughed. Mercer didn't. He stepped closer. You think you're untouchable because you're sharp and pretty. Eden met his eyes. No. I think I'm untouchable because I'm better. That was the moment. Mercer smiled slowly, darkly, and wrapped both hands around her waist, tight. Deliberate. No pretense of instruction now. His grip locked her lower back against him, strategic, controlling. Good girl, he whispered into her hair. They thought it was over. What they missed was how still Eden became. Her boots braced. Weight centered. Shoulders lowered. What they mistook for hesitation was a draw, data loading. Pressure points. Balance shifts. Grip angles. Distance to door. Everything mapped in seconds. This isn't correction, Lasker murmured. She's gonna squirm. Eden didn't move. You think I'm trapped? She asked quietly. Lasker chuckled. You're outnumbered, sweetheart. That word again. Mercer tightened his grip, anchoring her. You do what you're told. That's how you survive here. Eden replied instantly. That's how you survive here. Then the room snapped. Mercer jerked her backward half a step, trying to assert control. Eden planted. Left hip rotated. Right hand dropped and hooked his inner elbow. Torque engaged. Balance shattered. His center of gravity collapsed before his brain could catch up. Suddenly, Mercer wasn't restraining her. She was dismantling him. Eden slid under his weight, pivoted behind him, and walked him backward, not with force, but geometry. His thumb joint twisted. Precise, merciless. Pain collapsed his frame by inches. "You grabbed the wrong girl," she said. She pinned him against the padded wall, one arm folded perfectly behind his back. No mass advantage. Just leverage and form. A technique designed to end fights, not look dramatic. Laska rushed her. Too fast. Too angry. Too confident. Eden stepped into him. Her elbow locked his tricep mid-reach. She dropped her hips, spun beneath, hooked behind his knee, and redirected everything he gave her. His body hit the mat hard enough to steal the air from his lungs. She followed him down without pause. Knee to ribs. One palm on his chest. The other controlling his wrist. "You're insane," he wheezed. "No," Eden said softly. "I'm trained." Behind her, Catch finally moved, but slowly now. This wasn't hazing. This was exposure. "You think size protects you?" Eden asked Laska. "It doesn't. You think grabbing my waist makes me prey?" She tilted her head slightly. "It makes you target practice." She stood, fluid and calm, like the exchange had been routine. Laska stayed down, gasping, humiliated. Mercer stood frozen, face flushed, one hand cradling his ruined grip. He looked like a man discovering his nightmare wore combat boots. "I can end your career," Mercer said finally, reaching for his clipboard like it still meant something. "One report. Insubordination. Assault. You'll be out before you swear in." Eden stepped closer. Slow. Unafraid. "Then sign it," she said. "And explain why 3 grown men needed a girl to stay quiet." That line landed hard. Because the hallway camera showed who entered. Because bruises matched hand patterns. Because Catch was a witness. Mercer lowered the clipboard. The door clicked open. Senior Chief Armand Calloway stood in the doorway. He didn't ask what happened. He asked one question. "Why is she the only one standing calm?" No one answered Senior Chief Calloway at first. The question hung in the room like a held breath. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just precise. Why is she the only one standing calm? Mercer opened his mouth. Closed it again. His eyes darted, searching for the shape of authority he'd relied on for years, and finding none that could carry him out of what he'd created. Laska stood half upright near the wall, chest rising unevenly, face pale, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Catch leaned back against the padding, silent as ever, but his posture had changed. He was no longer watching. He was calculating distance, from the door, from blame, from consequence. Eden didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because for the first time since she'd stepped into the annex, someone else did. From behind the doorway, the quiet female petty officer, the same one who had warned Eden near the hydration station, took a single step forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize it. She said just enough. "Because they keep doing this." Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for proof, because it already is proof. Calloway's gaze moved slowly across the room. He didn't rush it. He looked at Mercer, then Laska, then Catch. Then back to Eden. She stood where she'd been the entire time, hands relaxed at her sides, shoulders down, eyes forward, breathing steady. Not defensive. Not defiant. Simply present. Calloway lingered on Mercer last. Too long. Mercer didn't deny it. He didn't argue. Didn't explain. He'd already calculated the odds, and for the first time, authority wasn't on his side. Denial would only sharpen the blade. Behind Eden, Laska shifted his weight like a man trying to shrink himself smaller. Catch took a step back toward the door, instinct overriding loyalty. The room had flipped. Not because someone shouted. Not because someone threw a punch. But because the performance had ended, and everyone could see the stage clearly now. The fallout didn't come with ceremony. There were no raised voices. No speeches. No dramatic removals in front of assembled units. The system didn't need noise to correct itself. The next morning, Mercer's name simply wasn't on the rotation board. Not crossed out. Not annotated. Just gone. By mid-morning, Laska had been reassigned, labeled a temporary administrative rotation 3 towns over. Everyone knew what that meant. Catch's contractor badge was invalidated at the gate before lunch. No memo. No explanation. Quiet removal. Clean. Nothing frightened predators, more than silence that moved them out of the room. No one celebrated. The women didn't cheer. The men didn't joke about it. And Eden didn't gloat. She showed up to rotation on time. Boots clean. Kit squared. Posture exact. But the annex wasn't the same. When she walked through the hallway now, no one laughed. No eyes tracked her waist when she reached for gloves. No one brushed past her with a comment wrapped in plausibility. They looked, but differently. Like people reassessing terrain they'd misjudged. The women didn't look away anymore. They nodded. The men stood straighter. Eden didn't change how she moved. She didn't slow. Didn't speed up. Didn't perform dominance or humility. She was the same 18-year-old she'd been 4 days earlier, jaw sharp, uniform precise, silence intact. But something around her had shifted. Like the air carried memory now. Like the floor remembered the sound of a clipboard losing its power. A new instructor stood near the mat bay. A replacement. Eden didn't memorize his name yet. She didn't need to. She gave a clean nod as she passed. He returned it, professional, respectful, careful. She didn't correct him. She already had. Because Eden hadn't changed the system. She hadn't burned it down. She hadn't rewritten policy or demanded protection. She had done something quieter, and far more dangerous. She had exposed the room's tolerance. She had let them make their move, documented every inch of it with stillness, and then showed them, without rage, without chaos, exactly what her body was built for. They had called her good girl like she was a toy. They had mistaken silence for weakness. They had thought a young woman's waist made her something to claim. They were wrong. That waist was built to carry war. And from that day forward, no one in the Concrete Bay Annex forgot it, because some lessons aren't taught by shouting, or paperwork, or punishment. Some are taught the moment the room finally stops laughing.